What is happening, NBA fans? How are we? Hope we're enjoying another week of beautiful basketball. Um, I know I've watched a tremendous number of games since last we spoke. There's been quite a few excellent games as of late. I mean, DeMar going banana times and closing out two massive threes. Um, that first one, I don't know if you saw it against the Pacers. That was a no, 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 yes type of one-legged jump up floating. Boy, you don't shoot well from three, and this doesn't look like good mechanics. Who gives a fuck? It goes in. Um, there's been a bunch of basketball as of late to discuss, to talk about. Um, I don't know if you guys watched any of last night's games. I caught the Grizzlies and Cavs, and then I caught the end of the Lakers and Kings. Both great games with really good finishes. And by Kings Lakers really good finish, I mean something I'm going to remember for quite a long time. Um, don't know if you guys saw this. It's a 5-point game left. 24, 25 seconds. Um, so the rebound comes down. De'Aaron Fox is there and lets the ball glide next to him and bounce down. He doesn't touch it, but the clock starts moving and he starts pointing up at the clock, yelling at the ref saying, I didn't touch the ball. So then the refs whistle it and then have a little confab and come back and say, it's a jump ball. And there was no explanation given during the broadcast itself. So I'm just sitting there going, well, are they saying because he didn't touch the ball, he didn't establish possession, therefore they blew the whistle, and with no established possession, the only way to resolve this is to go to a jump ball? But if you were watching it, every single Laker was on the other side of the court because they got back on defense. They didn't want anyone to cut into their 5-point lead with under half a minute left in the game. So because the clock operator at Staples Center or Crypto Center screws up, it ends up benefiting the Lakers because they get a jump ball and then they get possession and immediately fouled, and the game is over. And it's one of those, if my assessment and understanding of what was called is correct, that is letter of the law, but that is certainly not spirit of the law. And you damned well know it too. That, I mean, Alvin Gentry going just crazy on the sidelines is completely justifiable. Someone pointed out afterwards that he should have just taken his team and walked off and just protested the game and taken the forfeit or whatever, but forced the league into some sort of adjudication here. I haven't seen whether or not the league has officially given their last 2-minute report on this game yet. But it's just utterly ridiculous. Even if that is letter of the law, everybody knows that that is not what transpired. They should have just stopped it and given him out of bounds right over there in front of the bench. And we just move on with our day as opposed to benefiting the Lakers. Although as a Kings fan, this isn't the first time the Lakers have gotten calls that seem dramatically weighted in their favor when you've played them. So it's unfortunate. It sucks. But it was something to see. And then that other game, the other one that I watched, man, the Grizzlies and Cavs, two teams that I thoroughly enjoy watching this season. And the Cavs, unfortunately, since Rubio went down, they have not looked the same. It's somewhat unsurprising. That's why they made the move for Rondo, just to get some more, leadership and steady point guard play that can be out there and be another floor general. Because it's asking a lot of Darius Garland to do all the playmaking whatsoever. Although I'm not entirely sure how much playmaking Rondo is actually going to do, but he can direct the offense, and he's an intelligent player. So it's like having a coach out there very easily. So it could be, a good move. I don't know. Is it going to change the fortunes of the team and keep them where they're at right now? That remains to be seen. I mean, the Sixers are currently charging, um, and they've climbed into out of the play-in situation, and they're in the top part of the bracket, but they're trending in the right direction. Um, there's still flux up and down everywhere on tons of different rosters. Finally, the Jazz have succumbed to COVID, and Joe Ingles is out in health and safety protocols, but they have managed to stave off all of this until now. Um, but it inevitably will hit all of these. And even with the Sixers charging, you still have the Embiid, you know, 15 games that he's going to miss. It's inevitably coming. But that game last night, it's you see two young teams on the come up, both forging identities as to who they are. And Ja Morant has another I'm going to barrel into numerous defenders and hang in the air for 5 seconds against 7-footers and throw up just a gorgeous shot, a banker, just like he did against Phoenix, 3 games ago. It's, you know, it's beautiful to watch. But then previously before that, the lead up to that play itself, you had the Garland on the right wing penetrate down and then do a nice little soft dish to Mobley, and Mobley with a gorgeous little turn left-hander. They kept getting buckets in close because they've got so much size, and it's just this back and forth, back and forth. I'm curious, the more that I watch Memphis, would they be wise to potentially move on from Dillon Brooks? Because is there enough playing time for Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, plus Ja Morant, and keeping some sort of size in there and depth at your wings position? Um, I don't know, but Desmond Bane and Ja Morant are a tremendous 1-2 combo. Thing that kills me about Dillon Brooks is it's also what's great about him. This guy's got an unbelievable or an unshakable confidence in himself and his shot, which is something you need. But there are times where it really seems like it kills him, where he's putting up ill-advised shots over and over again. And I think just the pairing with Bane, to me, on eye test, works a little bit better. But Ja's quieting all the noise that I brought up that I wasn't personally on board with, but people began to discuss as to whether or not they'd be better. They're playing better without Ja, and Ja's teammates came back and was like, "That's a load of hooey. There's no way we're better long term without somebody of Ja's caliber." And he has, proven them correct over these last few games that he's been back. He's played with such ferocity and lack of intimidation, just continuing to barrel into the lane against guys. It doesn't matter how large they are. It's really impressive to watch night in, night out. Um, yeah, potentially I'm going to go see the Grizzlies rather this weekend. I don't know yet for a fact, but there is an outside chance. Looking forward to it, and hopefully that is the case. Because Ja is playing next level right now, and I've been wanting to see him all season. And considering the top tier that he's playing at right now, it makes me all the more excited to see him. So let's jump in. We got early comments. I haven't said hello to anybody. Rashawn Robinson said, "Let's go, Knost. How are you, man?" Jeremy Bowers, good afternoon, Knost. Hope you're feeling better. I am, thank you. Not 100%, but slowly getting there. Daniel Savoy says hello, and it says LeBron may be a problem, but his teammates are definitely motherfucking him right now. Okay, I take issue with that, but all right. Jordan Anderson says, imagine that, a Lakers game that was actually good for one. Rashawn Robinson brings up a great point. Replacement refs, no, it's very true. As evidenced by the fact that the call discrepancies between the beginning of the season and where we're at right now is different. The games were called much looser earlier in the season, and now that we have replacement refs, it seems as though they don't want to upset the apple cart. So they're more willing to give superstar calls when I was a bigger fan of just let them play. Like a bunch of these where they're initiating contact and then bitching about the lack of a call. It's like, well, you did everything in that mix to either bait the defense into fouling you or create the foul entirely and then act as though, woe is me. How are you not calling this? He impeded everything that's going on here. Um, I do love that clip from Nurkic mocking Trae Young the other night, where Trae barrels into Anthony Hardaway, or Anthony Simons rather, and then screams about the foul and gets the foul call. And I'm stuck in the middle a little bit there. It looked like it could have been called a foul, but at the same time, he was barreling into the defender. So exactly what is the defender supposed to do in this situation? But the replacement refs have made a difference. I think that the whistles are a little bit looser right now, as opposed to the tight-lipped nature at the beginning of the season, which some players were complaining about. And I know I was a fan of what the game looked like. It looked like FIBA basketball from over the summer, which is just shut up and play. You want to, the fouls will be called, but you're not going to get these ticky-tack baby nonsense calls that then benefit you disproportionately and get you to the line stinking, 12, 15 times a game. But that trend has changed. So it's very true. And as far as the Daniel Savoy saying, LeBron's teammates are MFing him right now. See, I find all of that hard to swallow. If I were a LeBron fan, I can't blame LeBron's teammates currently for their ills, because guess who is the individual that orchestrated getting those teammates? It's LeBron. He created the mess that he is currently in. So then to decry the mess is disingenuous. I'm sorry. Your team has been mediocre. It's mildly shit the bed. And you can't complain about the stink that has been left when you created that stink. Yes, his teammates have not played as consistently as, the Lakers need them to. And they've also dealt with a tremendous amount of injuries and COVID protocols. So much so that I think they have like 19 or 20 different starting lineups. And they've now opted to go with LeBron at the center, which is great. The opening of the game last night, where he doesn't even jump for the tip, just starts walking towards the defensive side. I've never seen that before. Watching basketball a long time, I've never seen that one before. But I can't say this is all his teammates' fault, when the situation was, partially, if not entirely, created by him. We'll never know how much of a say in the decision-making process he has, but we know he has a larger say than any other player, and more than likely any other player in the history of the league. So I take that with a grain of salt, to be perfectly honest. So the big news for tonight is Kyrie Irving is back playing for the New Jersey Nets officially. It begins this evening. Steve Nash is quoted as saying he doesn't know how many minutes he's going to get from Kyrie, but he is going to start. And they definitely need him right now. They need the offensive punch that he can provide, because that's too many times so far they've just succumbed to Durant, we need you to bail this entire team out. And he's, doing it to some degree. He's leading the league in points per game at almost 30 points per game. So he's doing all he can to shoulder the burden. And he's in MVP discussion, rightfully so. Depending on what metric you use, he's either first, second, or third, somewhere in the mix there. And I'm just saying, if you want to look at the numbers or any of the projection models that various websites have, he ends up first, second, or third, depending on whose projection model you look at. And I'd have to see the Vegas odds because that's also a good indicator as to whose story is swaying potential voters. But right now, I mean, Durant is the only consistent one. Uh, Harden is down to 22.7 points per game, which is the lowest scoring total for him. Still, 22 points is nothing to sneeze at, but it's the lowest scoring total for him on a points per game level since he was coming off the bench in OKC. And he's shooting poorly from three. It's just he hasn't really looked like himself. He's trying to, I guess, play himself back into full-on game shape. Although at this point, is he just going to be heavier? Is he just going to be that guy now? I don't know. It would more than likely reduce the longevity of his career, so I would assume it behooves him to slim back down to his previous weight. But I'm not him, and I'm not the training staff, so I don't know exactly. But if Harden is going to be performing at that superstar level, and then if Patty Mills has a bad night, then I don't know where in this current construction of the lineup they're going to get those extra missing points from. Because Joe Harris is out and still out for a couple more weeks, I think on the earliest. And then after that, you're relying on Bruce Brown, who's having a down season, not dramatically, but a down season compared to last year when it looked like he was just a tremendous asset for the team as a whole. LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake looks like he's fallen off a cliff. Claxton, no. So they decidedly need another playmaker in there and somebody else that can shoot the three ball, because if Durant has a bad night, then I'm not sure who's shooting well from three right now. Patty Mills will have a game like every second or third game where he shoots really well from three. And then the next game, he'll either be quiet or he won't shoot the ball well from three. But to some degree, this isn't who he's been. He was supposed to be an off the bench, spark plug type of player as opposed to getting heavy starters minutes. At least I'm assuming that was the design originally when they signed him in free agency. And then not having Joe Harris out there, it's going to make a difference. So right now the Nets have 47 games left on their schedule, and Kyrie is not allowed to play in the home games. So of those 47, 22 are at home. So there's 22 games that Kyrie is going to be unavailable for. And hypothetically, he is available for the other 25 games. A rule that I did not realize was in place until very recently was if you're part of the visiting team and you're unvaccinated, you can still play in the cities, well, at least in New York, that has a vaccine mandate. I looked it up and I found an article on Yahoo and a couple other places. And I did not know that. I thought the citywide mandate was an edict for both sides of the ball, but it's just for home teams. I fail to see the logic in that. If you're going to create the rule, then the rule should just be in place for all involved, is my opinion. So the weird thing is like when the Nets play the Knicks, if they go across town over to the Garden, Kyrie is suddenly allowed to play. I don't understand how that makes any sense in the world whatsoever. So there's 22 games right off the bat that unless Kyrie is willing to get the vaccine, he's going to miss. And there's the other 25 games that he'll be able to play. And is that going to be enough? I mean, the team now has gone back on the stance that they had, the moral stance that they had to start the season, which is we don't want a part-time player. We want somebody who's going to be here for the long haul. The long-term contract extension that you were anticipating is now off the table since you're not willing to basically do what you can to be here for us to help us win a championship. And for them to backtrack on this, I mean, reports are that Durant and others went to management and said, "Just let him play. We don't care that he can't play in the home games. We need the help." And because of injuries and health and safety protocols, they have been, um, you know, chipped away at as far as roster depth. They've got a number of games to make up, as do like the Bulls and the Raptors. But anybody that missed a chunk of games and had them postponed because of health and safety protocols, but they have not been at their full strength. So for the players to come to management and say, "Hey, we don't care. We realize you made a public stance and a major opinion known, but we would prefer to have him playing with us, even if it's just part time." So they'll have him for 25 road games. And one silver lining of this for them could be the fact that, Kyrie tends to break down. So by only having him for half the games, roughly, that is building in rest into his overall schedule. Now, it's fine, like having that built-in rest is fine until we get to the playoffs, or if it's at the end of the season and you want a specific seeding over another. Although on some level, I think it behooves them to be the 5th seed. That way, they're on the road for the entirety of the playoffs. And if Kyrie's going to continue to not take the vaccine, then they would have him for more games than not, especially game ones. When if they can steal one on the road, then they lose game 2, then they go home, or whatever the case is. Or if they steal the first 2, then they just need to win one of 2 at home and then go back out on the road. It adds a completely different metric or a different calculus into what they should be visualizing as the goals at the end of the season and projecting through the playoffs. But having him for those, 25 games, is that going to be enough? And how long is it going to take him to get back into full on game shape? I would imagine it'll be much closer than somebody like Klay Thompson, who we're going to get to a discussion of in a moment. Is another player returning. Um, Tentatively Sunday is last I heard, but I haven't heard officially anything yet. But I would imagine, he's been working out. How much, I'm not entirely sure. But doing what he can to stay in some facsimile of game shape. So if you just kind of ease him into it, maybe play him 15-ish, 20 minutes tonight, see how he looks, and then slowly creep up his minutes. Although it's one game on the road tonight, and then they have their next 2 games at home, so Kyrie can't play, and then they go on the road for 2-3 games, I believe. So will he be playing on back-to-backs? I would assume so. Why wouldn't he? You've been sitting all the rest of this time, and meanwhile Durant is playing an ungodly amount of minutes on a repaired Achilles, and playing great, but that can't be a long-term recipe for success, can it? Especially if you're Durant. Do you want to think about the full arc of your career? So, although it's easy to say that, and then you read interviews from Durant, and he's just like, "Look, if I'm out there, I want to play every minute. I want to play as much as I possibly can. It's who I am. I love to play basketball, and it's the only thing I want to do. So why wouldn't I play all those minutes?" You're like, "Well, okay, well, he knows his body better than we do. Just seems like a repaired Achilles is something you don't want to mess with." Because I'd be curious as to how many times you can repair an Achilles. And actually, if you were to rupture it again, you'd have to assume that his career would be dramatically altered after that, because after the time it would take to come back from rehab, he'd be on the very tail end of his prime. But that being said, LeBron is redefining what a prime could be for a modern player with the new advances in diet and exercise and maintenance science, medical science, everything else. But so Tamor Khan says, Matt, please tell that dropping $400 to watch Klay's comeback game is absolutely worth draining my bank account. 400 for where? I'm assuming that's Upper Deck. But 400 for where? Let's start there. Let us know, Tamor. And let's get some comments going. If you now, granted, you need to be a Warriors fan for it to be justifiable on some level, $400 for a regular season game. But what kind of seats? Is it, if it's Upper Deck, is it at least at half court? Or are you going to be at some weird angle or behind the basket in the Upper Deck? I don't know. But 400, let's hear. Ramon Cook says, a bit late, but good evening. Hello, Ramon. So Rashawn Robinson says Miami Heat playing better with replacement players than the Lakers' real squad. Well, I don't know that the Lakers have their real squad yet, but yeah, the Miami Heat are playing really well with replacement players. Although Spoelstra does it year in, year out with a whole cast. I mean, before they got Butler in that period between, the high water mark of the Big Three era and where they're at now, they had a whole collection, like numerous years of collection of disparate parts, and Spoelstra managed to get them to wildly outperform expectations, end up sneaking into the playoffs. And what was it, like 4 years ago, where they assumed they'd be at the very bottom, and it looked like it through the first half of the season, and then post All-Star break, they went on one of the best runs in the past, X number of years. Their defense was next level, and it was with guys that I wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole to put together a competent team night in, night out. So I think a lot of credit goes to Spoelstra and the malleability of some of those players. Whereas this Lakers team, and like most LeBron teams, they're constructed to perform around LeBron. And then when you take LeBron out of that equation, this team doesn't make sense anymore. That's why I don't put a lot of stock in the look at the decline of the Bulls once Jordan left versus the Bulls once LeBron left. It's like, yeah, but LeBron's team was completely engineered to function one way and one way only. Now, I guess you could say that to some degree with the Bulls, but the Bulls had, I don't know, a greater sense of team identity as opposed to LeBron and players. So you could take that as a justification for how great LeBron is. And I don't think you're wrong in that instance. But I also think to say that the underlying team structure, well, they were designed in two completely different ways. So Jeremy Bauer says Kobe is a better leader and player than LeBron, but people are not ready for that discussion. Was he? Was he, Jeremy? In your heart of hearts, you genuinely believe that? Well, as far as leading, it's just two different styles. Kobe is cut from the Jordan cloth of, I will demand of you a certain expectation level, and whether or not you can achieve that is entirely up to you. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but not all people respond to that. It's a different leadership form, but player, I would take LeBron every time over Kobe. I don't question it. LeBron is a better player to me overall. It just gives me so much more flexibility and malleability in how I could create a championship team, whereas Kobe is slightly more specific. So there you go. Jordan Anderson says, who would you say are the most improved teams this year? Well, I think first and foremost, it's the Cavs. Cavs have to be the number one overall most improved team. Them and the Bulls, but the Bulls, there was an expectation level once they made all these free agency moves. Hey, they could end up in the top 4 type of discussion, top 5 type of discussion, whereas the Cavs, I don't think anybody had pegged them. They're currently sitting at what, 6th in the East? They've been, they were just at 5. Rubio going down is really throwing a monkey wrench in who they are, but I don't think anybody anticipated them being this interesting. Them and possibly Memphis sitting at 4th. But I think my number one most unexpected has been the Cavs, and they've been a really fun team to watch. And it also sucks that they're in my division. Just because we are already, as a Bulls fan, we've been staring down the barrel of Cavs, and then LeBron left, and then LeBron comes back, and then LeBron leaves again. I was like, oh, great. And then Giannis ascends, and you're like, oh, great. Now we got to deal with Giannis in our division every year. And then now you're throwing the Cavs into the mix when I was hoping, well, it's like, all right, well, we only have one real competitor in our division. It's like, oh, nope. Cavs are probably going to be a nice problem year in, year out for the next few years, right when we've built ourselves back up as well. But I think the Cavs are my number one most surprising, most improved team. So the other potential guy coming back in the very near future is Klay Thompson. And that is, of the two, of him and Kyrie, that's the one I'm most excited for and most intrigued for as to what it could mean for the team. And how the other players will acclimate to this, because so tentatively right now he's set to come back on Sunday, and Nash has said, or not Nash, I'm sorry, Kerr has said that he will start. And so that means that guys that have gotten used to playing heavy minutes, basically I'm looking at you, Jordan Poole, you're going to be coming off the bench. You're going to be playing in a secondary role. And with this minute squeeze, how is that going to have an effect on somebody like Gary Payton II or Juan Toscano Anderson or, the other individuals that are floating in that 2-3-ish area. Now, some of those guys have a little bit more flexibility because they can, because of their length, their size, and their defensive ability, they can play at other spots. But it is going to eat into the minutes of those individuals. And will this bonhomie that the team has as a whole continue? I'm assuming so, because Klay is so much a part of the culture of that team, and every player knows it. Your Pools, your JTAs, your Paytons, your Bielitsas, your whatever, before they got there, they obviously know that Steph, Klay, and Dre and Iggy took the Warriors from a backwater, nothing destination to a pinnacle top tier franchise. So to bring him back, you just have to say, you know what, this guy has earned all the right in the world to do this. And I am just going to continue to play as needed. I'd be curious too, like with Wiggins has basically found a role for himself, which is not to be assumed a number one. And he's been kind of like on certain nights, a default number 2 on that team, unless Poole has it going, and he's the default number 2. But I think Wiggins operates probably best in that, do you need me? Do you not? I'll be out there doing what I can when I can, but I'm not going to try and inflict my will upon the game, which is absolutely perfect if you're like, a 3 option. And that's a pretty fantastic 3 option. By all accounts, one of the most gifted players that numerous guys have said they've ever played with. Um, so to have that flexibility in your third position is pretty fantastic. So bringing Klay back, I just have the questions with Kyrie is like, oh, the what will the offense look like? How long will it take him to get back into kind of playing shape? Will this situation work of on night, off night, that they're creating for himself and for the team? With Klay, it's some of those same questions, but the last time he played was in the finals in 2019 against the Raptors when Kawhi was on the Raptors. I mean, the last time Klay played, Westbrook was on the Thunder. On the Thunder. He has since played for the Rockets, the Wizards, and now he's on the Lakers. Uh, that's how long it's been since Klay has played. I mean, he's going to have to shake the rust off. So what kind of, expectation level do you create for a guy like that? Because part of his, abilities and attributes to some degree don't matter that he hasn't been playing as much because he plays so much off the ball. You just kick it to him and he spots up and he shoots, and he's one of the best of all time. So that ability in and of itself there shouldn't be a problem there, but he might not have the legs because he's not in full game shape. So those shots might not go down. He'll still have quite a bit of the opportunity because of the fluidity of the offense. They will still be cutting and moving off ball, and Curry's gravity is still going to continue to draw extra defenders, even when it shouldn't happen. It's amazing to watch. You watch games and Curry will be running down and he'll have the ball on a fast break, and suddenly he'll have 2, sometimes 3 defenders collapse on him at 28 feet. Just like, oh my God, they have as so long as he can get the ball out of his hands and over to another teammate, there's an easy shot somewhere on this court. So those open shots will still exist for Klay, but he'll need to get his game legs back in him. How much is his defense going to return? Because he also has to get over the mental hurdle of he blew out his what was it, his right ACL, and then his left Achilles. Is that what it was? Oh no, it was his left ACL, and then during the rehab, November of 2020, he blew out his right Achilles. But now you have the psychological hurdle to get over of needing to trust your body again to go through full NBA game action. And that's going to take a little bit of time. There's going to be some hesitancy and tentative feelings, which is understandable. You're going to need to get your legs back underneath you. I'm assuming his defense is not going to be anywhere near where it was for at least this, immediate time frame. How long will it take to get him back into a reliable consistency? I don't know. I mean, it's great that it's happening for the Warriors, that it's happening now, and they can, even if he does start, it's like, we're going to play 10 minutes and then we're going to play 12 minutes, and they can slowly build him into game shape. Because the one advantage the Warriors have right now is they're playing the best basketball in the league. If Curry has an off night, they still win. Draymond is out against Utah, they win. Curry has a bad night, Jordan Poole steps up, they win. Jordan Poole is off that night, Andrew Wiggins steps up, they win. And it's really impressive, because if you watch any other team, you watch the Nets, Durant has a bad night, they lose. Denver, Jokic has a bad night, they lose. The Lakers, LeBron has a bad night, they lose. Doesn't matter any other team, by and large, superstar has a bad night, that team loses right now, except for the Warriors. The Warriors are the only one where the sum of their parts is enough to overcome the loss of something that should seem as though it's a regular season insurmountable kind of mountain, and it's just not. And it's wildly impressive to watch night in, night out. I'm really thankful I live on the West Coast for this little Warriors renaissance, because I get to catch a bunch of these games. And just purely as a basketball fan, they are a boatload of fun to watch. I love watching the ball zip around and you find the open man and it's best shot available. Now, there are times where guys force shots that they shouldn't. It's inevitable, but it's not the ISO ball and we're just going to have a guy settle for a contested 19-footer for no reason other than apparently our offense is designed for that. It's not nearly as fun to watch. But with Klay, I mean, if Klay comes back, right, and by the end of the season, he's at 85, 90% of what Klay was beforehand, the Rockets have to be the overwhelming favorite to win it all. And now with the depth of youth they have, of developing guys in Jordan Poole and Gary Payton Jr. and Juan Toscano Anderson, and they still have Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman, and Kuminga gets a little bit of run here and there, and they have some faith in developing him, with the first team, so to speak, right now. But they've done such a good development job side, that they could still send, Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody down to their G League, let them get more run up there, come back up with the regular team, and slowly bridge this gap. And the Warriors could do what they've been wanting to do, which is turn themselves into the Spurs, be consistently good year in, year out, and a threat to win a championship. Like cycle it through every 3-4 years, and suddenly they've got another team together that got a shot. You still need top tier talent, but so long as you fill in around the margins and you develop the young guys or guys that have been cast offs from other teams, they're really good about that. The Raptors are excellent at that, which is getting guys in the second round and developing them into legitimate players, that can, perform and succeed for you. All right, so here we go. From Taymor Khan. So he's from Oakland, and he's in the lower bowl, but behind the backboard. For 400, though, lower bowl, that's not bad. That's not bad. I was expecting, I guess maybe I'm just so accustomed to Los Angeles prices, but for terrible games like that Kings game last night, I'm assuming upper deck was $100, and it's a meaningless game. And that's $100 for not a good upper deck seat. And if you want a good upper deck seat, 150, 160. So 400. I mean, look, if it's not going to break the bank and, you're not putting yourself in financial, risk or harm, I would be inclined to do it. It's, part of me is thankful that I don't live in Chicago, because I would justify paying to go to way too many Bulls games that I'd have to get season tickets. I mean, just have to. There'd be no way around it. It'd be a sacrifice that I would make every year. But so at least here in Los Angeles, I can pick and choose specifically what teams I want to go see and what players I want to go see, which is nice. It reduces my overall basketball bill at the end of the year. And I don't mind spending the money on it. It's just I can easily convince myself to spend more money than I should for a 2.5 hour event. But 400, not bad. So he says with fees, it's closer to 500, and it's the last row of the lower bowl. Nosebleeds are 300. Um, well, is that 300 with fees or is that 300 before fees? Because if you're talking yourself into going and it's 300 before fees, so after fees, although fees, if it's the same everywhere else that it is here, your fees aren't as much the less your tickets are, which is stupid. Those seller's fees that the seller just gets to tack on some random number, apparently. The closer you sit, the more they get to tack on, or the more they can get away with tacking on, I guess. So if it's like 350-ish to sit in the nosebleeds or 500 sitting that lower, it's a good question. I guess I would need to know where in the nosebleeds, but if, if 500, if you're not balking at 500, perhaps do it. Um, oh, so Tamor says yes with fees for 300. Well, that's a $200 difference then. I don't know. If the sight lines are good at Chase, I might take the nosebleeds. I'm just hesitant to drop that kind of scratch, especially when, like, my brother-in-law went to a finals game last year. He drove to Phoenix, and he's a Bucks fan, and I think he paid like $1,400 for a decent seat. So you're like, well, play now. Granted, that's never going to happen in the Bay Area. There's no way you're going to get a decent $1,400 seat in the playoffs and the finals, no less. But if I had to pick and choose my spots, I think I'd save a little bit of cash here and maybe use that money to go to another game personally. But that's just me. I'd like to see as many games in person as I possibly can. But with, you know, pandemics and all that jazz, it's not entirely easy to do at times. So, Tamor, good luck. If you end up going, let us know. Um, yeah, I want to watch that game, but the Grizzlies Lakers game would be the one I may be going to, and that's on Sunday. It's at 6:30, which means it would be happening roughly at the same time as the Warriors game. So I'd have to watch the Warriors game afterwards. But oh, and Tamor already has. There you go, tickets to the Warriors Nets game. That'll be a good one. Um, but yeah, so I want to watch Klay return, but if I can make it work on Sunday, I'm gonna go see the Grizzlies because I haven't seen Ja play live yet, and I'd really like to do that. Um, but yeah, Klay coming back, it opens up a lot of questions. And hopefully we get some semblance of answers over the next, couple weeks as to because the knee jerk reaction is going to be to watch Kyrie tonight and Klay on Sunday and go, there it is. I know everything I need to know because you're going to get talking heads tomorrow assessing everything that Kyrie did last night and projecting that is sacrosanct fact and law of what his production is going to be like for the remainder of the season. And that's just asinine. Um, but with Klay's especially, it's been so long and it's two big injuries. One used to be a career killer in Achilles, and Durant has now proven that the technology and so long as you're willing to take rehab and rehabilitation seriously, you can come back from that and still be top tier. Um, so Klay, I'm looking forward to. I can't wait to see how he looks in this upcoming game. Um, but that's it. I think that's everything I need to talk about for today's Drop and Dimes. Thank you to everybody that joined us in the chat. Tamor, Rashawn Robinson, Daniel Savoy. The action is the juice. Sorry, I didn't see that you chimed in. His comment was guys that won't win MVP, but I am happy that they deserve to be in the conversation. DeRozan and Morant, Garland and Van Vliet. DeRozan and Morant, and then he asked Garland or Van Vliet for an all-star spot. I'm going to do all-stars I thought about doing it this week, but I'll hold off a little bit and do All-Star in the very near future. Because I got thoughts, baby. I got thoughts, just like all of you do. But anyway, where did we leave off? Jeremy Bowers, Jordan Anderson, and Ramon Cook. Although an active chat, tons of people chiming in numerous times. So thank you to everybody that joined me. That is it for Dropping Dimes today. You can follow me at Matt Knost anywhere on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're listening to this and you want to watch, I do it every Wednesday at noon over at youtube.com/dropping dimes. So please join us over there Wednesdays at noon Pacific Standard Time. I go live. And that is it. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys next week with another edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.